So we wanted to use this opportunity at Vator Splash Oakland to really start to explore what an equitable tech ecosystem would look like here, what a tech ecosystem and community that would include all members of the community would look like. And so this is really central to the K4 Center's work that we're undertaking right now in Oakland because we love this place and see the enormous potential that is here. Good afternoon. Well, all right. Hi, I'm Cedric Brown from the K4 Center for Social Impact. I'm one of the managing partners there. And if you haven't heard about the K4 Center, we're an Oakland-based organization. Really, really proud to be here in Oakland, trying to provoke positive and progressive uses of tech for social change. And in doing that work, some of the things that we're concerned about certainly are diversifying the tech sector and making sure that the tech industry and sector is mobilized in order to use all of the kinds of human and capital resources that that sector brings to bear for positive and progressive change when possible. When we were presented with this opportunity to be a sponsor of Vator Splash Oakland, and thank you very much Bambi and Karen for asking and approaching us to be involved here. When we were approached with this opportunity, we said, yes, absolutely. This is a great chance for us to start this conversation that we've been really interested in about how we can ensure that there is a vibrant and inclusive tech ecosystem here. We all know that the tech industry, the tech sector is an economic engine for the United States and indeed globally. We see that the effects are starting to come into Oakland, be rooted in Oakland, pop up and bubble up, grow in Oakland. And we wanted to ask, how can we ensure that folks from the San Leandro to the Berkeley borders, from the port to the hills, are included, both folks who are newly arrived and folks who've been here for a long time, included in this burgeoning tech ecosystem and all of the kinds of benefits that it brings. So we decided to try to put together a group of folks from different sectors here in Oakland who could provide perspectives from their vantage points on what a vibrant, inclusive tech ecosystem could look like. One of the goals for us doing this is to kick off a longer kind of listening campaign where we're soliciting the perspectives and opinions of multiple stakeholders, multiple residents, multiple folks in the Oakland community about how we can, as a community, go about developing this kind of platform, framework, etc., so that we all have a touchstone as a guide for including everyone in on this sector and ecosystem. So we're really excited about this assembled group of folks we have today, but before we go any further and introduce them, I wanted to say a couple other things. First, I want to introduce Karen Wertman, who's one of the executive producers of Vator Splash Oakland. She's also one of the co-chairs of 2 Point Oakland, one of our partners in this endeavor.
Thank you, Cedric. I'm so delighted to be here. I was excited to get involved with Vator Splash Oakland. I've been an Oakland resident for almost 17 years. I've been talking to the press a lot about Vator Splash and about what's been happening in Oakland and about the assets that we have here, about that we're getting a lot of people coming here to Oakland because it's more affordable, because it's less expensive, and they're staying for the assets. So, and we all know the assets about the art and the food and the culture and the diversity. But I think one of the assets that I thought about in the last few days is this is a place that's uniquely equipped to have difficult conversations. And what I mean by that is that Oakland is a place that has embraced its diversity. It is fiercely authentic. And I think people that live here are devoted to maintaining that and to being a place where difficult and challenging conversations can happen. And I'm probably proud as much of that as I am about all the other things that we bring to the table here. So I just want to say thank you very much to K4 Center. Thank you, Cedric, Mario, for bringing this wonderful panel. Thank you here in the audience for showing up here in Oakland. We've had lots and lots of venture money here. We've had lots of people coming through here. And I'm very proud and happy at this moment to be part of my adopted hometown of Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. So I'm going to try to compete with the train a little bit. A little bit about the format for this afternoon. No, we're not going to have all 8 people on one panel and speaking at the same time. We're going to call them up in groups of 4 to give, to share comments over a period of 5 minutes apiece. So we're trying to keep these short and pithy and full of the kind of wit and wisdom that we know folks have. I'll introduce 4. They will each speak, then introduce another set of 4. They will speak. And then we're going to call our partner, Susan Marinette, the founder of Oakland Local, our partner on Live Work Oakland, and just an entrepreneur and visionary herself, up to do some question asking of this assembled group of panelists. We won't have questions from the audience until after all of that, if we have time. So just think of yourselves as being at kind of a TED-style talk, a SED talk, or something like that. So that'll work. Okay. So without further ado, we're also not going to read out the speaker bios. They're located on our website, capeworthcenter.org/Vator/2014, for any of you who are interested in more information about who each of these speakers are. So without further ado, I want to call up the first 4 speakers. Kelly Kahn, who is with the Office of the City Administrator of the City of Oakland. She's a Special Projects Director there. Jose Corona, who is the CEO of Inner City Advisors, right around the corner. Mike Gilmetti from Signature Development Group, he's the president. And Ashara Ekundayo, who is the Chief Creative Officer of Impact Hub Oakland. So Kelly will speak with us first.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Kahn. I'm with the City of Oakland. I'm the lone government official on the panel, but great company. And I'm an urban planner, urban designer by training. My career has morphed over the years, and now I'm really charged with working on several key economic development initiatives for the City of Oakland. And what that means is really I spend a lot of time thinking about how to grow the tax base in Oakland, bring investment to Oakland, so that we have more funding for basic services, longer library hours, park maintenance, programming at our rec centers for young people and the people who live in Oakland. And as an urban planner, I really want to do this kind of work always with the lens of how do we preserve what is so great about Oakland, and actually what drew me to this job. I'm a longtime Oakland resident, but I have been working in San Francisco for the last 8 years, and I've been now at the City of Oakland for about a year. And the reason I wanted to come here is probably the reason Vator wanted to come here, and a lot of people are coming, which is that there's something really special and unique happening in Oakland, and I want to explore it. As the first one up here, I just wanted to say how excited we are to have Vator Splash in Oakland, and acknowledge how much Vator has really embraced Oakland and celebrated Oakland, and it feels so good to sort of be seen, to have what we know is so terrific about Oakland be seen by the Vator organizers, so thank you. So I think I want to step back a little bit and just talk about what I think a lot of us already know. But this question of why Oakland? Why is Oakland sort of so ripe to grow a tech industry here? And I wanted to sort of make a point that in Oakland, the tech industry is definitely an emerging industry. It hasn't fully arrived yet, although I feel like in the last few weeks, things might be changing. And we do have a large number of tech companies here, Pandora, Sungevity, who I sort of throw in the mix, Ask.coms, and day by day we have a ton of new startups. But it's still, when you look at the numbers, it's only still about 2.5% of our workforce are jobs in tech. And that number is probably changing day by day, and it's hard to get a real grasp on, but that's a fairly small percent of our workforce. That's compared to about 8% in San Francisco, still small, but in real numbers, that's quite a lot more jobs in San Francisco in tech. But Oakland is ripe for growth in this sector. And I think a lot of us know the reasons, but one of the most interesting trends, or at least trends to me as an urban planner, is that we're seeing these real changes in the workforce, that today's workforce, the millennials, are urbanists, right? They are choosing cities. They're choosing cities because of the diversity of experiences, the diversity of people. They're choosing this sort of city life, the sense of discovery that comes with that, the richness and vibrancy on our streets over these slightly more sterile suburban landscapes where the tech industry has traditionally been housed in big industrial sort of campuses, seas of parking around them. It's a very different way and place to work than places like San Francisco and Oakland. And one of the reasons that I think this city life is such a draw and is so important to the tech industry in particular is that that kind of sort of creativity really breeds more innovation. And it allows for spontaneous interactions, exposure to new ideas, just maybe on your lunch hour or before work or after work. And this is exactly what Oakland offers, right? Art and vibrancy and authenticity. And what the other amazing thing about Oakland is that we have people doing creative work across disciplines, not just in tech, but the arts and in food and biotech, solar, public health. We have a huge nonprofit sector doing really creative work around poverty and youth and community financing. We have some of the preeminent thinkers about how you keep wealth local in an economy, about community IPOs. Kiva Zip has a presence here. And so much of the work is really driven by, I think, a sense of responsibility and community. And that's very Oakland, I think, very Oakland. Another trend that is quite interesting is that these workers want to live where they work, and they don't want to be auto-dependent, and they want to be places where they can bike and take transit and walk. And for the first time, we're seeing car ownership rates decrease among people ages 16 to 34. So that moment when I turned 16 and the very first thing I did was go to the DMV, that's changing. People are putting this off and off and off. And they're getting their, and they're sort of, I think, this real movement of rejecting these auto-dominated lifestyles. And this also has to do, I think, the social conscious and this sense of wanting to have a more sustainable lifestyle, and cities offer that. And this implication and what it adds up to for Oakland is that I think for the first time, companies are beginning to follow workers so that the talent is starting to drive locational decisions. And workers are starting to choose quality places like Oakland. And then you layer on Oakland's financial accessibility, which we all talk about, that the commercial rents are half here what they are in San Francisco, and housing costs also almost half still. And this allows people who come to Oakland to take risks, to be innovative, to be creative, and still have a decent quality of life. And this is really important. Boy, I haven't even got to my vision yet. I'm so busy touting Oakland that. So anyway, so what does a sort of a diverse and inclusive ecosystem look like around tech in Oakland? And I think the story of Oakland tech is already sort of manifesting itself. I think that vision is already manifesting itself, that we're seeing a high number of mission-driven and values-driven companies choosing to start their companies in Oakland and grow here. These are companies like Mind Blown Labs that create games for teaching personal finance, Sleek Geek, the Immunity Project, which is looking for using crowdfunding tools to support solutions to HIV. And a lot of these companies are started by men and women of color. And then we also see a very robust network of nonprofits working in a space to create a more inclusive tech industry. So linking young people to jobs, teaching tech skills. A lot of these are funded by the city, by the Kapor Foundation, Hack the Hood, Susan Murnitz Group. And then the maker and art scene, the artist scene here, is really important to our ecosystem, not just because they sort of fuel the creative spirit, but these artists are using and creating new technologies around 3D printers and robotics. And so making sure that we maintain space, affordable space, industrial space for these people through our land use decisions is really key. So I want to sort of end on, I think, what the city's role in all of this is to create this more equitable ecosystem. And I think if we don't want to see what is so special about Oakland, its diversity, its ability to be a creative person here, eroded by unequal access to jobs and to housing. So first, I think the city needs to be a real leader in connecting people and residents to the infrastructure that is out there, that is getting more and more vivid by the day. So working with the Oakland Unified School District to link companies with internships, linking teachers to externships, where they get to go and be in companies and learn cutting-edge technologies that they can be back into the classroom and inspire their students. I think the next, though, major thing that I think the city has to do, and this is not the responsibility of the tech industry, is really put forth a progressive housing policy to make sure that the people who live here are protected and have access to housing that's affordable and of a high quality. And there's real pressure forming around our housing market right now in Oakland. Vacancy rates are very low, rents are going up. But yet there are only about 160 market rate units under construction right now in Oakland compared to thousands in San Francisco. The good news is there's 800 units of affordable housing under construction. But there needs to be sort of a proactive, aggressive policy around getting more housing developed. And the city is doing this. We're trying to streamline the development process so we can get more housing built to stabilize the demand and get the rents under control. We also have to be a leader in finding new sources to fund affordable housing. With the loss of redevelopment, one of the major engines for getting affordable housing built is gone. And that's a huge loss. And the city's actually already one of the first cities to say, well, what little money we do have left from redevelopment, we're putting into affordable housing. So we do have a fund, and that's how some of those units are getting built. And also tightening up those rent control laws, which our city council has already taken. And then finally, and I will end here, and just in the spirit of getting as aspirational as possible, I'd love to see a regional collaboration around changing Prop 13. So cities aren't so strapped for cash to pay for the basic services, which is at the root of so many problems. And that would just help local governments be better equipped and empowered to solve these kinds of problems. That's sort of a conversation for a different day, but I'll end there, and thank you so much for letting me share these thoughts.
Thank you, everybody, for having me here. My name is Jose Corona, CEO of Inner City Advisors, and I want to start off by the questions that we actually were all asked to prepare for. They asked us to talk today about what makes an inclusive tech ecosystem, what it's going to take to get there over the next 4 years, and what, from Oakland, do you want to maintain or maximize? So as we, ICA, we're right down the street, support businesses as a way to create good jobs, and we also have a fund called Fund Good Jobs, that invest specifically on helping companies grow to scale and create jobs. But I want to tell you about myself, because there actually is tech in my background. I'm a farmer. My dad's a farmer. We grew up in Watsonville, California. My dad was one of the first farming companies in the Watsonville, Salinas area to use technology as a way to do agriculture, irrigation systems, all that. So my point today, and what I'm going to be talking about today, is that we need to be thinking about tech in a broader sense. So it's not just Pandora, it's not just Ask, it's not just people that are creating apps, software. It's broader than that. We are here because it's all about jobs. People need to work. And for us, if you're doing business, we're going to work with you because you want to create jobs. Yeah, we like money. That's got to happen first. People need to make money. We want it to be equal. So let's think about this. What if we refined tech differently and we took a cluster approach? What if we thought about tech and who supplies tech, who buys from tech? What if we look at those businesses as well to make as an ecosystem? So it's not just the companies that are creating the products, it's not just Pandora, but who does Pandora buy from? Who do they sell to? Who are their suppliers? How do we think about them that way? Who do their employees use and cater and go to and support in the community? What if we all work together collectively, not only tech, but also the suppliers of tech, to really think about how we all work together to create good jobs? So what if we think about tech in this manner? What if we think of back to the roots? One of ICA's company, they do mushroom kits and an aqua farm. What about their tech? What about Cabo Conte, the founder of Grilla Cafe and Red Bay Coffee? Tech. What about Rain Free, Red Door Catering? They supply a lot of tech companies. They cater to a lot of them, actually some of the major ones. What about Oaklandish, Angela Say? What about Meredith and Tanya from Med Support Services that provide behavioral services to kids with autism disorders? What about Nina Joyner from Fillmore 510? Tech people need some adult toys sometimes, right? What about Farhai, whose business is about cleaning carpets? A lot of their customers are tech. They go to people's offices, they clean them, and they create jobs, and they pay good wages, above living wage, with health benefits. What about Otay's Taqueria in the Fruitvale? Let's not forget about the neighborhoods. All tech is not just in uptown and downtown. How do the communities and neighborhoods benefit? East Oakland, West Oakland, the Diamond. I'm glad to see Libby here. She's my councilwoman over there. What about Alfonso Dominguez and Angela, the creators of Pop-Up Hood? That's how a lot of businesses get started. How do we think about it in tech? So how do we think about our future? The kids, all these kids that are actually eating Revolution foods in their schools. That's the future of tech. Our tech community, the workers, the ones who start the companies, and the people who actually work there, that's what they're going to look like. So how do we start preparing them for the future? And again, to the question, what do we want to maintain about Oakland? And what if we keep the A's here? That has a huge impact on how we can actually think about the community. So I want to thank you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Cedric. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you all.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Gilmetti, president of Signature Properties, or Signature Development Group, I should say. And we are a developer in town. We've been building things in Oakland for about 16 years and other parts of the Bay Area. But we moved our headquarters here about 4 years ago. And the reason we did, and I think the reason some of you are here, are we love Oakland. And the reason we love Oakland, and we'll get into this notion of inclusivity, is that Oaklanders love Oakland more than I've seen any other people love their own cities. And there's an energy here that it's a very, well, I'm addicted to it. And when I go to other places, I'm fortunate I can travel for business or pleasure to other places, I always miss it and want to come back. And the other reason that we, is this moving? Yeah. So the other reason we love it is, and I'm not a tech person, I think this is just set on slides. So is that, one, people love it, and two, people are here for a purpose. Right? They didn't have to be here 10 years ago. There are a lot of other places that some would say are better, I don't, that were either safer or more developed or more intriguing. And people are here because they wanted to be here. And so therefore, what developed out of that from an evolutionary purpose is a sense of purpose. People have a mission. And a lot of the companies that are here that we find locating are ones that could be tech-oriented, but they also have kind of a social mission. And again, as Jose pointed out, these are companies that want to make money, need to make money, and this whole model of sustainability, economic sustainability, is certainly number one, or you can't keep doing good works. But they're focused on doing bigger things for the world, and that is very impressive. So why I think I'm here is because I'm a developer, not a software developer, a real estate developer, and we create physical spaces. And I think that's very important to the notion of inclusivity. Kelly pointed out housing. There's a lot more diversity of housing product going on here. We have a project just down the street. There'll be 3.5 million square feet. It'll look like Mission Bay. High-rise, mid-rise, live-work lofts. There's another shot of, as an artist may envision it, it's going to grow up with its own architecture. Parks as big as the Marina Green, et cetera, to create a great living environment for future residents, existing residents, et cetera. This notion of housing shortages and supply and demand, thank God, are actually getting into the parlance of our discussion about housing prices. We need more of it. Seattle doesn't have the problem that San Francisco has because it creates more. It has tech jobs there too and high-paying jobs, but the prices don't work like they do in San Francisco. So we need more supply, and we need a bigger diversity of supply. This is the only kind of product you can build in San Francisco. Put it here first because it's kind of a sexy project and kind of cool, but it's the only kind of product that can be built in San Francisco. And we've built over a dozen projects in Oakland, from East Oakland to West Oakland to Central Oakland and Fruitvale to the waterfront and downtown. And we can build townhomes and single-family homes in certain areas. We can build a high-rise and mid-rise. We can build lofts and cool tech-type space. And I think that's the key to this notion of inclusivity and bringing in a wider variety of people. This is our new Hive project, which Ashara will talk to you about in a second, because they've moved their offices, hub. I thought this was a pointer, but they're right here. And this was just awesome 1970s architecture that we brought back to life. This is kind of a mid-range when we tore down those facades. And this is what it looks like today, and we're still doing the landscaping and the signage and whatnot. And this is actually a building built by Julia Morgan, or designed by Julia Morgan, that we're going to be restoring. Just across the alley. This, I don't want to steal Ashara's thunder, but this is a workspace that we were lucky enough to team up with Impact Hub in Oakland here to create a co-working space, co-location space. And all of these folks in here have a social mission as well as an entrepreneurial mission. And these are the types of spaces and diversity of spaces that I think will make Oakland, continue Oakland's trajectory. This is a slide of our Hive project. That alley in the middle is going to be, Keba is going to be doing his Red Bay coffee roasting in a empty or a repurposed shipping container. We're going to activate that space. You can have, we'll have restaurant space out there and certainly coffee and other uses, be able to have speakers and events and things like that. So Hive becomes a kind of symbol of Oakland. You've got residential in the back. You've got office and retail clustered and repurposed buildings in the front. And most of all, you've got this sense of community in the middle. And that's what continues to bring me back to Oakland time and time again, is this sense of community and sense of purpose. And these are just things we built over the years. These are live-work lofts on the bottom and housing in the front, kind of contextual Victorian style. This is our Broadway Grand project with Ozumo and Pecan and fabulous tenants. And this is a new one we're doing in Temescal, to be named as a project. And so I think the point being is sense of purpose, excitement and energy about Oakland, and this notion of providing a broad palette of workspaces. I don't see that in San Francisco as much. I love San Francisco. I'm not denigrating it at all. But I don't see the diversity of spaces anymore. We did 15, 20 years ago, but the new housing, really because of the costs of construction and land and candidly some of the government issues there, are far more expensive to build, so therefore the only types of housing that can be created are very expensive types of housing. And here we have a lot more land, a lot more variety of types and context, and so I think we're going to get a lot more variety of housing to create workspaces and living spaces for a broader palette of people. And I think that is something we're quite excited to be a part of. So thank you very much for having us, and Vator, thank you for coming to Oakland. Certainly KPOR for helping to host this symposium.
So good afternoon again. My name is Ashara Ekundayo. I'm co-founder and chief creative officer at Impact Hub Oakland. And I'm just really thrilled to be part of this conversation with you all today. And what I'm hearing already, and I'm sure I will continue to hear, and what you all have probably taken in from your day and a half or 2 days here at Vator Splash, is that we define the culture. So being someone who describes herself as a cultural worker, it's always very important for me to think about what it is about culture that actually brings us back to ourselves. So, Mike, for you to talk about Impact Hub Oakland as one of the physical spaces that your company has worked so diligently with our team to develop is important. I'm actually going to talk about the mindfulness aspect of what works here and what I believe is going to be the way in which Oakland is going to continue to be a vibrant and resilient city in terms of tech and every other industry that is part of the community here. So when I was a kid growing up in Detroit, Michigan on the west side, my mother would take my sister and me to my cousin's house to visit our family on the weekends. So, she could have her weekend or whatever. And that included a visit with my grandfather. When we were 6 or 7 years old, we realized that our grandfather was illiterate. He couldn't read or write. That he had gone his entire life without being able to have access to written information, and that he, in fact, had never signed his name. Now, we didn't know if our parents knew this information. We thought, oh, wow, we have this secret about, we called him Papa. But we knew that we had a choice. So I tell you a little bit about my history because I realized it was the first time that I really took into myself that our group, our small group, had the opportunity to make a choice that would have a huge impact on our entire family. So let me go forward with that. This is a picture of my parents before I was born, apparently. So they were always talking with me about how I had to be on the lookout for my sister. My little sister, she's 3 years younger than I am. Everything that I do, she's going to do. Everything that you say, she's going to say. You influence her. You have absolute impact on your little sister. So I'm still all about that, taking care of my sisters, looking out for them, looking out for the people and whatnot. And what I believe is that in order for Oakland to really come into its place with an embodied sense of a clear and vibrant ecosystem, is that we're going to have to mind the gap. We're going to have to do more than just be on the lookout. We're going to actually have to be about really being diligent and conscientious and conscious about creating opportunities, about being advocates for one another, about really closing the gap. You're minding it, you're closing it, and that you're creating access for other people to be part of the conversation. That is what we talk about when we talk about equity. So we do that being engaged with people, with place, and with space. This is a flyer from the Life is Living Festival, which happens every October in West Oakland in Defemery Park. It really says it all. It says it all. Oakland is proud. You know, Mike, you spoke about that as well. I chose to move to Oakland almost 4 years ago from Denver, Colorado. I had been coming here for years. I'd been consulting. I was falling in love with the city because of its heritage, because of its legacy, because we're not taking it, it's not happening on my watch here. Like, people are just like not having any shenanigans about it. And there's going to be a protest about it if you try. And I just really believe and support that. So what I want to say about the uniqueness that is Oakland is that we sit in the intersection of the edge. It's a permaculture principle in which we celebrate and cultivate and nurture the two systems in the place in the middle where two divergent systems come together. That we sit between San Francisco and the South Bay, and that we have this special Oak Street style, and we need to continue to cultivate and celebrate that. So it happens that way, that in minding the gap, we want to make sure to not misstep or step badly, so that we don't have to deal in the same way with the deep problems that are actually fueled by the tech industry around housing, around development, around racial inequity, that our neighbors are having to deal with in the South Bay, in San Francisco. We're not having it here. So it's already part of the conversation, but it's being talked about because we are about having hard conversations here, as Karen said at the beginning, of our session together. We do this by not only funding tech startups, we do this by funding startups, businesses, initiatives that aren't businesses yet, they're just ideas that are about creating containers for innovation. So people matter, place matters, and space matters. So this is where we take our next step. There's a lot going on with us already, this innovation, this entrepreneurship, all of this really great renaissance is bubbling up right now. We hold space, even at Impact Hub Oakland, we hold space for Black Girls Code, for HILO.com, for the Pathways to Resilience Project. Cape Horn Center for Social Impact has a workroom there. That we're doing this work because the next step means that we are minding the gap. We have to continue to do that work by creating and holding spaces. So I'll close by saying, my grandfather died when I was 14 years old. But every day for the last 6 years of his life, he read a book to his youngest grandchildren. Every day he got to do that because we taught him how to read when we were doing our homework. We taught our grandfather how to read. So when you mind the gap, you pay attention to what's going on. You're honoring those who have come before you, those who are in the space, and you're thinking about those who are coming behind you. And so we have the ability to design a regenerative city, a regenerative community. That's innovation and technology, just right there. And that what I want to ask you as we continue this conversation is, are you willing in your circles, in your community, in your business, at your kitchen table, to make decisions that have a positive impact on the larger community? Are you willing to do that? Thank you.
Thank you to the first four speakers. So we had Kelly saying Oakland needs a progressive housing policy to undergird a growing tech industry. Jose with let's define tech in a broader sense, creating jobs, especially around businesses that cater and support tech companies. Mike saying Oaklanders love Oakland more than other people loved their cities, among other things. And Ashara, we need to be diligent about closing the gap and creating access. These are just some little gems. Let's hear from the next 4 folks. We have Karen Engel, who is the Interim Director of Development at the Peralta Community College District, Maria Poblé, the Executive Director of Causa Justa, Just Cause, Marta Riggins, the Director of Talent, Brand, and Events at Pandora, and Catherine Bracey, the Director of Organizing at Code for America. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. What a blast I get to be on this panel. Thank you very much for inviting me. Mike was counting sort of how many years he's been around. I was counting, I think I'm coming on something like 18 years. I took a job in Oakland in 1997. And so in starting my talk and thinking about this work, I got very reflective, and I see a lot of people I love and have known about that long out there. And I thought to myself, well, back in those days, anybody remember this map? Lisa. 1998, the city went through a very excruciating general plan update process where it started to look at how we were going to use our land. And if you look at this, some of you may not be able to see this, you see a lot of yellow. That's housing, predominantly housing. The big purple, the port and the airport. The pink, sort of some of our business, mixed business, commercial areas. And then you've got the magenta, the downtown. And getting to know Oakland back in the 90s, it was a pretty complicated place that was experiencing the throes of its history and trying to get to the next phase in its development. It was a little bit painful at times. But I bring that up because Kelly talked a lot about how do we get investment here? How do we grow these fun, uniquely Oakland industries here? And I went from Oakland for a while and worked at the regional level, which is also important because when you pick your head up from Oakland, you also realize that what happens here, we are at the crosswinds of a bigger region. And obviously it's bigger than this. But what happens at Cal and Lawrence Berkeley Lab affects Oakland and is affecting many of you, maybe why you're here. What happens in San Francisco similarly, all the time. We experience things as a easterly wind from them, and Silicon Valley and the trends around VC money, of course. What has always been behind my motivation to work in economic development in this region has been jobs and connecting people to those jobs. So whether we're busy creating those jobs, as many of you do, as Jose does every day, or whether we're trying to help young people connect into those. And I think the question we were asked around what's our vision and also what can we do about it is how do we connect meaningfully the young people in our region to what's happening? And as many of you, I'm sure, read in the paper, there's increasingly big gaps between what young people are prepared to do and the jobs that are there for them. And it's not just about young people, it's a lot about dislocated adults as well. So my new career, and I'm very delighted to be part of the Peralta Community College District, working with the 4 colleges, Berkeley City College, Laney College, College of Alameda, and Merritt College, and working on what is central in the news a lot about the role of community colleges in trying to be that very accessible bridge between the world of education and the world of work. And I have just a few thoughts to share with you about that and how well it's going or not, and the role of all of us in thinking about it, myself in particular. So I had my daughter do this because I'm not technology proficient, but I had a list of all of the 58 career technical education programs at the 4 Peralta colleges. There are 58 technology programs. And back to Jose's point, it's not just IT, it's not just ICT, it's not even all bio or biotech. You know, I've got kids, and I'm going to run through my slides so you can be impressed in a minute, doing tech in every sector. 30,000 students every semester at the Peralta colleges. For some of us, to me, that was an eye-opener. 58 technical programs, as I mentioned. 69% of those students are part-time. So they're working. They're using the community college system to bridge themselves between something, and for some it's a job at McDonald's, to something else, perhaps something related to your work. 36% of those 30,000 people are enrolled in technical programs. So they are becoming technologically advanced in their chosen career. 68% of Peralta students, of OUSD, Oakland Unified Secondary students, end up at the Peralta colleges. Not right away, some of them leave, go do something else, but eventually 68%. So a very exciting part of my work right now is how do we connect what's going on with career pathways in Oakland Unified with the Peralta colleges. And there's a whole lot of work for any of you interested around how we connect that work to the place of work. And I see some of my dear friends at the Oakland WIB thinking that through. 16% of these students are college students. They're enrolled in a 4-year college, and they're coming to the Peralta colleges to get technical education. And 14% of Peralta students already have a bachelor's degree, and they've come back to get a technical certificate or something because they can't find a job. So I don't know if I've impressed upon you what I believe is the importance of the Peralta district and its role in facilitating an accessible tech ecosystem in Oakland. So just to run through, and I put a ton of pictures in here of our students in biotechnology, state-of-the-art facilities in downtown Berkeley, Berkeley City College, biomanufacturing, working with companies like Novartis and Genentech, Amgen, microscopy. Every single hospital needs people. This is a mouse intestine. This is a kidney. These people are learning how to use advanced high-power microscopes to do biopsies and other medical procedures. Here are some of our students in the microscopy department. Accessible. Peralta is an open access. All community colleges are open to absolutely everyone. So you see all kinds of people getting their hands on technology in ways that most of them never knew they could. Changing careers. We train nurses. We train radiologists. We train dental assistants. And just before I run out of time, another way to think about an Oakland tech future, if you think about the retiring baby boom and the evolution of our workforce, we are talking about 1 out of every 10 jobs probably needing an advanced degree beyond a bachelor's, 2 needing a bachelor's, and at the end of the day, 7 needing a high school degree plus some kind of technical experience or certificate or 2-year degree. This is our machine tech, 3D printers. People get their hands on them, they work with them. We partner with all kinds of local companies and groups to get kids experience, the young adults. We are training electricians, we're training all the environmental control folks. This is technology. Back to Jose's point, these are all tech jobs. Aviation, College of Alameda trains all the people who fix all the airplanes at OAK and SFO. Information, communication, we have state-of-the-art labs at Laney and BCC. BCC has connections, thankfully, with Pixar now, but you'll find many companies become skeptical until they get their hands on some of these people and realize what these programs have to offer, and this is how we're going to create access. So finally, it's about completion and getting these folks through, absolutely, a degree, a certificate. It's also about connection. And one of my messages in representing them now is really how can we do a better job connecting this incredible portal that our society has built, an open access portal to create opportunities to really become technologists, to become educated citizens, and connect them to the world of work. And that's the work to be done, in my mind, as we become partners in creating access for folks into the tech future. If we do that, we will be successful. If we do that, we will connect people to the Sungevities, the Pandoras, and to the Children's Hospital Research Institute who cured sickle cell anemia. Thank you very much.
Wow, I never thought I'd see a mouse intestine. Thank you to the public education system for that. It's good, you need to know. My name is Maria Poblet. I'm the executive director of Causa Justa, Just Cause. Has anybody here ever biked from where we are to East Oakland? Or that way? Yeah, okay, good. So if you've ever biked from here to East Oakland, you've seen what I love about Oakland. You've smelled yeasty Ethiopian injera bread. You've smelled spicy hot links, fresh Vietnamese fish sauce, chilies roasting, soon-to-be salsa on a $2 taco on the original taco trucks. You know, the original trucks that were cheaper, that are still on 23rd Street. Yes, my people invented the taco trucks. Yeah, we never took out intellectual property rights on that. That was a big mistake. You'll hear Laotian, Tagalog, Maya, Mandarin. You'll hear my home language, Spanish. You might see on the same block a queer couple pushing a baby stroller to the park and a dozen black and brown teenagers freestyling across the street in front of their high school. That's what I love most about Oakland, the people. Alma Blackwell is one of them. She was born and raised here in Oakland. Thanks to affordable housing, she's able, as a single mom, to raise a disabled son. She does so with the support of her parents, who live 10 minutes away, and a community of friends and neighbors who she's lived next to for decades. Alma turned 50 a couple years ago, and she was looking back on her life in Oakland. She's seen her community, her friends, her family pushed out of the city by gentrification, as working class salaries stagnate and rents skyrocket, catering to new and affluent residents. Alma's experience as a black woman in Oakland is hardly unique. According to the census and a report Causa Justa just published in collaboration with the Alameda County Public Health Department, Oakland lost 25% of its African American population in the last 10 years. And the foreclosure crisis caused a 50% drop in African American home ownership. Where did people go? Some became renters, tolerating worse and worse conditions in what's left of affordable housing in exchange for low rents. The San Francisco Business Times reported that Oakland and San Francisco saw the highest rent increases in the whole country last year. In neighborhoods like Chinatown and Eastlake that are not far from here, average rents increased 18% in step with new affluent residents. Many people just moved to Antioch, to Vallejo, to other outlying suburbs where housing was more affordable, but decent jobs, crucial social services, and political power for communities of color was non-existent. As newer, richer residents increase the tax base, and the poor get pushed out, if you don't look closely, it may even look like progress because the indicators look better. But meanwhile, the communities that need development the most are left out in the cold. What's so awesome about Alma is that, like many of you here, she's an innovator. She didn't just see this problem and think it's too complex and changing this would take too much. She didn't sit around watching gentrification happen. She didn't accept the race and class remake of the neighborhood that she loves, that she raised her son in. She didn't accept gentrification as something natural, something inevitable, something only people with advanced degrees or huge investments could do something about. She rolled up her own sleeves and she got to work. She helped build Causa Justa, the Just Cause, the grassroots organization that unites communities directly impacted by displacement across race, across language, across neighborhoods. She helped win California's Prop 30, which is the last time California had a progressive tax, and building towards the overturning of Prop 13. Yesterday, she helped win Oakland's first cap on rent increases, a law that will keep thousands of families in their homes. Dozens of neighbors, everyday people, mobilized to make this policy happen, speaking in various languages, hoisting babies on their hips, tweeting furiously, sharing snacks. When the hearing went long, it was a little long, I know. And as we speak, Alma is canvassing the flatlands of Oakland, talking to Oaklanders about her vision, our vision of a future city, one where stable, healthy communities thrive, where democratic power is in the hands of those who need change the most, where development is not synonymous with displacement, where development serves the communities that need it the most, and where we chart a way forward together that leaves none of us behind. Can we build an ecosystem in Oakland where tech startups and heavy hitters with progressive ideas, creative capital, and political influence challenge the myth that displacement is an inevitable outcome of development? Can Oakland's tech sector learn from longtime communities here, reinvest in them, partner with them to preserve the social fabric they have knit together over generations? Can we build a city that upholds and protects the diverse communities that attract us to this beautiful place in the first place? It isn't a simple solution of building market rate units. In our report, Development Without Displacement, we propose 6 overarching principles to prevent displacement in the city we love. 1, legal protections for vulnerable residents. 2, affordable housing. 3, stabilization of existing communities. 4, a non-market-based approach to housing and community development. What if development was focused on human beings? 5, displacement prevention as a regional priority. Other speakers have talked about this. We aren't an island. We have to address this issue regionally. And 6, city planning as a participatory process. In November, we're going to put a healthy housing initiative on the Oakland ballot, addressing the needs of longtime Oakland residents, reducing their vulnerability to harassment, discrimination, and incentivizing basic repairs that make their housing more livable. This is one piece of proof that at the grassroots, the community is ready to lead the way towards an equitable future for our city. If tech is ready to think outside the box, you can follow us towards the place I love most, Alma Blackwell's Oakland.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marta Riggins, and I am not Sarah Wagner, who you saw in your program. Unfortunately, Sarah Wagner had a family emergency, and she was incredibly disappointed she couldn't be here. But I am delighted to be here amongst all of these amazing people who are just doing incredible things in Oakland. A little about me. I'm the Director of Talent, Brand, and Events for Pandora, and my team spearheads employment branding, recruiting events for tech, non-tech, new grad, university recruiting, our road crew internship program, and diversity hiring, as well as employee experience and culture for Pandora and our Giving Back program. A little bit more on a personal note, in case you don't want to go read my bio on the site. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and I'm a proud Oakland resident, if you can't tell, for over 4 years. So, you know, we were all asked to do these questions, and so my perspective is more about kind of Pandora's collective view versus my own personal, although it's a little bit woven in there. I also have to quickly introduce another member of my team that's here, Lisa Lee. Stand up, Lisa. Give everyone a wave. That's Lisa Lee. She's amazing. She is our recently joined diversity program manager. We stole her away from Facebook, and we're so delighted to have her here. So 14 years ago, Oakland became the home of Pandora. And without being in Oakland, Pandora would not survive. It's what we do recognize that without Oakland's existence, Pandora would not be successful. We've loved watching the neighborhood grow. We've seen it change dramatically. We are based in the uptown neighborhood of Oakland, and the past few years, it's just been incredible to see the change there. You know, I think that as many of these people already mentioned, for those who work and live in Oakland, we know what a gem it is and how amazing it is. And Pandora is incredibly proud to be in Oakland, and we don't intend to leave anytime soon, or at all for that matter. The city is interesting. You know, the city is, I don't want to like repeat everyone's words because everyone said the same things, but I think we say them all because they're true. The city is rich and diverse and vibrant and has this energy. And in a way, it's kind of synonymous with Pandora's Music Genome Project. And for those who don't know, the Music Genome Project is a platform that serves you music. You know, our collection is incredibly diverse and eclectic, and that's sort of how Oakland is, and we feel like Oakland's the perfect place for us to be. So what is our vision for the burgeoning hub of Oakland, and sort of what's Pandora's place in it? You know, we want Pandora to be to Oakland what Cal is to Berkeley. We want the community to be proud of it. We want your children to want to work here. I want my son to want to work there one day. And most importantly, we want it to be accessible to those who have that dream. And as we develop the tech community, I think Jose touched on it really nicely. We need to not forget the humanity of tech. As Lisa, my colleague, so eloquently put, people are what make technology, and technology, in fact, should serve the people. So I think that's something that we need to make sure is inclusive as Oakland's tech hub definitely grows. So what will it take for us to get there, and what's Pandora's role? Pandora is very committed to the current and future workforce. We are a creative community here in Oakland, and we want to create a place where people in the East Bay and tech employees in the East Bay can work and live. We want to retain people, keeping them in the East Bay versus getting on a bus and going to Silicon Valley every day, and we're very committed. In fact, with our recruiting efforts, we don't target Silicon Valley. We don't ever intend to have shuttles. We really try to target people who are working in the East Bay and San Francisco so that they don't have to get on that bus and they can just go across the bay or come right over and work in downtown Oakland. We're committed to representing the city and its amazing musical influences. We're really lucky in that we have musicians from all over the world come to our offices and play for employees, exposing them to different types of music they wouldn't already know. And we also try to represent that when we go into the industry. For example, at South by Southwest this past March, we brought Oakland hip-hop legends The Coup to perform in Austin, and it was amazing. So we really try to represent Oakland when we're out in the field. We also are committed to recognizing our role in this community. Pandora is not a campus environment that we talked about in Silicon Valley. It's an urban environment. While we do have the occasional bagel, pizza day, we don't provide our employees with free lunches, dinners, and breakfasts because we understand that without that developing community around us, we don't thrive. So we encourage employees to go out and support local businesses and go try the new restaurant down the street, and that's incredibly important, and we do that purposefully. We also understand our social responsibility to the communities that we affect, and through our giving back programs, we've really tried to deliver them and root them in music discovery. In fact, this is kind of a well-known secret Pandora has not talked about, but I'm going to talk about it today. For the past 7 years, Pandora has funded and done an employee-led music program in Futures Elementary School in East Oakland. Fifth grade students at Futures Elementary get, enriched with music discovery, and we bring music to the lives of children who wouldn't already have access to it. The curriculum is entirely employee-led. It's employee-created. We do things like keyboard jam sessions, writing lyric workshops. We have them come in and record, and we even bring artists from the community into the school. We also were able to partner with the Oakland Raiders last year and bring the Raiders to the school, which is incredibly powerful. We also have incredibly rich women in business outreach committees who are very active in the community. The first Tuesday of every month, we do boot camps. In fact, we had Tech Bridge in yesterday, where we bring in high school students to come and tour our office, meet with staff, learn about our business plan, and be able to see and talk to people about career opportunities and directions they can go in career path. They're also involved in the Wardrobe for Opportunity organization, as well as the Women's Initiative, where we have female employees come in and provide advice and review business plans of those women in the community who are trying to get their businesses launched. So in closing, I think that Pandora's perspective is that we have had success because Oakland took a chance on us, and we're only as good as our community around us, and we're incredibly invested in Oakland. Thank you.
So I'm going to start with a quick confession. I'm a little bit of a poser because I've only lived in Oakland for just over a year. And so I think that means that I cannot speak with as much authority as all the other panelists here. But I will say that I came here on purpose, and I'll tell just a little bit of a story. I've been in the Bay Area for about just over 2 years, and I started off in San Francisco. Going to let that train pass. As most people who are new to San Francisco feel, I was quite horrified upon arriving at the stark social dysfunction I passed on the street all the time, and talked about it so much with my friends who had lived here for a long time. One of my friends, who is a startup founder based in the Mission, said to me once, I thought of you the other day when I was passing a bum at the BART station and his coat was on fire. And I realized that usually I would just like walk right by that guy. But like you're being horrified at all this stuff really made me think about that. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to move to Oakland. So, so I moved to Oakland. And the reason why is because I felt like there was a much stronger sense of community here, and everyone has said it. There's a deep pride of place, and I didn't want to live in a place where it was easy to just step over someone who was on the ground on fire. And he says in his defense, he wasn't actually on fire. He was more smoldering was the word he used. But anyway, I moved to Oakland. And so the thing that I want to make sure we preserve as Oakland becomes a tech hub is that sense of community, the sense that we aren't going to step over our neighbors, and that the tech industry is really rooted in a place. And so I think to preserve that, civic technology needs to be at the center of the conversation. And by definition, civic technology is about place. It's about collaborating with local government to use technology to solve social problems. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how Code for America has supported the civic tech community in Oakland. And the good news is that the civic tech community in Oakland is strong. It's probably, we work with hundreds of cities across the US. It might be the strongest civic tech community in the country. But please don't tell New York or Chicago I said that. So anyway, I'll start with a story from last year. So Code for America was, Oakland was a Code for America city last year, and what that means is that 3 fellows took a year off from their tech industry jobs to work with the city full-time on how technology could address a public problem. And here, these are the 3 fellows here with our city champion, Libby Schaff, Councilwoman Libby Schaff, who filled out the Code for America application for Oakland. And these 3 fellows, along with their city partners, started looking at the public records request process. Now, how many of you have ever filed a public records request? Yeah, so you know it's a horrifying process, and it doesn't make anyone feel good on either side, the city side or the resident side. And so the fellows built a tool that it's called Record Track. It won Civic App of the Year last year. And it basically digitizes and makes transparent the entire public records request process. So when you file a request, you are immediately connected to the human being on the other side who is going to fulfill your request, and you can talk to that person. And they can ask you questions about what you meant. When they fill the request, everything is digitized. So if someone makes a request for the same document another time in the future, the city employee can just point them to that document instead of having to fill the request again. And now this is also kind of a backdoor into digitizing a bunch of city information that wasn't digital before. And it's a smart system. So if you request something that the city doesn't have jurisdiction for, the tool will point you to the county or the state where that request should be sent so that the city employee doesn't have to actually spend the time answering that question. And I'm proud to say that the city is really invested in this tool. Libby honored it yesterday at the city council meeting, and they are maintaining it as well. So we're excited to see this take off, and now the federal government is actually looking at this to use as their FOIA process requesting tool. Oakland is also home to Open Oakland, and the leader hi Spike, raise your hand. That's Steve Spiker, he runs Open Oakland. A true Oakland institution. So Open Oakland is our Code for America Brigade chapter here, and the Brigade is a citizen volunteer program. This is coders and non-coders, just people who think that the city could be using technology more effectively, working on a volunteer basis in collaboration with city officials on projects like making the budget more transparent and interactive. This is just the first version of the budget. We're working on actually tying tax dollars to outcomes as well. How many of you know what a soft story building is? Yeah, this is something I had to learn when I moved to the Bay Area. So there are a lot of buildings that are probably going to fall down in an earthquake. Do you know if you live in one of them? I don't know. Does the city know if it needs to be retrofitted? So the brigade is taking that information and trying to make it more transparent for residents and the city to understand what the retrofit needs are. We also built Oakland Answers, which is actually a redeployment of a tool that the fellows from Honolulu built a couple years ago. And this sits alongside the city's website, which, no offense to the city's website, actually does a better job of answering questions that people actually come to the website looking to get answered. And the answers are written by citizens. So if you go to Oakland Answers and type in driver's license, you'll see an answer written by one of your neighbors. And I don't want to, there's nothing to announce yet, but I'll just say that Oakland Answers has become, the conversation that sprung up around Oakland Answers has spurred a larger conversation about the city's web properties overall. And we're starting to think about how we could actually revamp how Oakland looks at city services online. And I couldn't not talk about, at this event, what we think is a really important issue, which is the civic tech startup ecosystem. And we hope that maybe Oakland can become a hub for not just the civic tech community, but the civic tech startup world as well. We spend at the city, state, and federal level $140 billion a year on technology. That's in 1 year. That's 15 times bigger than the video game industry. More shocking than that is that 94% of all government IT projects that cost more than $10 million fail. Healthcare.gov is not the exception to the rule. So if you're an entrepreneur, I would like to encourage you to look at civic technology as a real a place that is ripe for disruption. And we actually run an accelerator to try to create the environment where civic technology can actually change how government works. And that application process is open right now until May 15th. You can apply at codeforamerica.org, and hopefully Oakland can become not just a hub for the tech industry, but for the civic tech industry as well. Thanks.
Thank you to the past 4 speakers. So Karen Engel underscored the big reach and impact of community colleges as trainers or training ground in a broadly defined tech community. Maria talked about how push-outs and displacement may look like progress because the indicators may look better, but don't be fooled. To challenge the myth that displacement is part of progress. Marta said that without Oakland, Pandora Radio wouldn't have survived. They're committed to Oakland and want the community to be proud of them. And Catherine talked about how civic tech needs to be at the center of tech communities, helping to preserve a sense of connectedness and humanity. So Susan is the founder of Oakland Local. She's the founder of Live Work Oakland. She is an entrepreneur, visionary, journalist, so many things, so many wonderful things. She's an asset to this community. We're really proud to have her as a co-sponsor of this panel, and she, wearing her journalist's hat, is going to ask some tough questions. Okay, maybe they won't be that tough, but Susan, take it away.
Hey everybody, it's really good to see you up here. I moved to Oakland in 2008 from Silicon Valley because I had a Techstars company. I was a former Brooklynite, and I thought this would be a good place to work, and ended up dumping all those things and starting Oakland Local. And one of the things that I thought about that any of you who have experience with the venture community had to think about is the difference between the conversation and values that we're talking about and the emphasis that so many VCs have on deal flow, and in my case, when Techstars, having an 18 to 24-month exit. You know, VCs love the idea of having a quick exit, very different than the idea of Pandora leaving a legacy. So I think it's really great that you know, Oakland is a place where we care about job creation, and we have so many mission-driven organizations, including the groups that you represent. I agree with everything that you say, but I think that there's probably still a little bit of a disconnect between the values that a lot of people in the venture community have had about what their role is, and the kind of emphasis on building really thriving places and making sure that your relationship to a place creates jobs, creates equity, creates something sustainable. And I think one of the questions I'd like to throw at you, I think is actually a pretty hard one, which is, do you see any models of companies, whether they're tech companies or other kinds of companies, that are doing it right? You know, who is walking the talk in a way that is inspiring to you, where you say, I really like the direction this company is headed in, or I like the way that this company is trying to build their business. And I would say they could be small, new companies run by people who are coming out of a different mindset from the traditional venture-backed big company, or they could be big companies that, are just really trying to focus on the kind of values and placemaking that we're all saying are really important in Oakland. Who should we be looking at in Oakland as companies, not only in Oakland but elsewhere, that could help us find that right balance between venture and profit and investment? And then, really what is a localism that creates fair opportunities for people who are already here and supports new businesses that come in.
You mean besides Pandora?
Oh yeah, and besides Pandora, that's right. We know Pandora is committed, and I like that word legacy for Pandora. But yeah, besides Pandora, who do you like? Who should we be looking at?
It's not an Oakland company, but I really admire the way that Kickstarter has approached growing their business. They're based in New York and obviously wildly successful and profitable, but they're not looking for an exit. And actually, just this past weekend, they had a block party near their new offices in Brooklyn, and had a wide diversity of community members who just came out and hung out in the street with them. And they're about promoting creators, and that's so much about how not just their bottom line, but the kind of culture that imbues everything that they do. And they're just very much of New York. Like you think of the New York tech community, you think of Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Other companies that you like?
These also aren't Oakland companies, but I've one which is so huge, they have the luxury of doing this, but I worked quite closely with Salesforce in San Francisco, and from the minute I started working with them a few years ago now, they had a foundation that was well established. They were working with kids in some of San Francisco's most distressed neighborhoods. I was working with them on their campus designs when they thought they were going to build a new campus in San Francisco, and right off the bat, like Pandora, they had a real value system around, we want our people on the street, we're not going to have cafeterias, and now you watch the way the founder is giving his money to places like the UCSF Hospital. Oakland's now benefiting from that with Children's Hospital and that relationship. This doesn't answer your question quite as directly, but one company that's been interesting to watch and watch their growth is Airbnb, who when they first came out of the door were this really sort of interesting, disruptive company doing these things that we all sort of thought was really neat, help us make some money renting our places. But now they've gotten so large, they're actually affecting the real estate market in these major cities in these really powerful and not always positive ways. So watching them as they try to deal with the externalities of what was really a very sort of cool idea has been it's complicated and sort of inspiring to watch them to work to fix it all. And so that's just another model that I've been watching closely.
Okay, Jose and then Mike.
We're in Oakland, so there's actually a lot of great stuff going here in Oakland. So Revolution Foods, I mean, you don't have to look further than that. It's a great company that started off by two grads from Haas Business School, chose to locate here in Oakland, one of our ICA companies. And the reason I say that is that if you look at the 3 rounds of financing they've gone through, everything from foundations to banks to now venture capitalists, and they've kept their mission intact, which is staying local, hiring local. They actually committed, one of the first companies that signed off to work with ICA on our workforce talent management initiative that actually was funded by, Libby was a strong supporter of that worked to actually focus on the reentry population. So they're the ones that said, we're going to make it a strategic HR decision at our company to hire from this population. Because you look at the world out there, Kickstarter, Airbnb, all great companies, but who's not getting hired in those companies? So you got to look at that as well. So for us, we really look at who's not getting hired and who are these companies that are actually focused and committed, and it's actually a strategic decision for them to actually invest in that. And they're in 25 cities, 12 states, 1,800 employees. So we've grown from 2 people to 1,800 and just keep growing. And they're committed to staying here in Oakland. They're growing.
Great answer. Thank you.
Well, I have 2 examples as well, both Oakland companies and their first 2 tenants at our Hive project. One is represented by Impact Hub, who has made a point of not only hiring locally, but being owned locally by a diverse group of people. But also they are civic-minded and engaged. So they host educational forums, nonprofit forums, for-profit forums, and it's the whole gamut. Their next-door neighbor is Numi Tea, which was born in Oakland I think 12 or 13 years ago. And its owners still live in Oakland, and they hire locally to the extent they can. They reach out to the educational community and to the broader community for employment, and they've actually formed a NUMI T Foundation, I think it's called, to give back. And so that basic genre of community and civic engagement, philanthropic engagement, and trying their best to work within those constructs to hire locally to the extent they can. Look, no company can hire 100% local people or give all their money away all the time. They've got to make money to be economically sustainable, and these are just two models of companies that have done it locally.
Anybody else on the panel?
I want to shout out Sungevity and Mosaic in this building, specifically the work that they have done. I want to say, kind of disclosure, Sungevity actually incubated Impact Hub Oakland in this building. This was our office for a year. We actually were housed upstairs, and we watched every other business come in. We watched this fun cube develop around us. But Danny Kennedy, in his generosity, said, you know what, I want to support your business. And we were the only non-solar company in this building, and probably, that we will probably hold that distinction forever. So I think that's about it. But I would also say just both of their, the vision of Billy Parrish and Mosaic, and watching him grow up as an Ashoka Fellow and a Green for All Fellow, and just really being a badass and being just being a rock star educator, and really committed to making sure that he had a company that invited all people and continues to do work that lifts all boats, and is a fierce advocate for equity. And so you see how that they have succeeded because of that, and they were, again, incubated through Sungevity. So this is what happens when we fund each other's projects, when we believe in each other, when we open our heart to each other, when we mind the gap. So those are my two Oakland-based badass companies, yeah.
At the community level, there is a very small company that's very beloved, Gun by Gun. So this is a gun buyback app that really meets a community need. So the tools of tech are at the service of community needs. And it's really well loved in the Mission District that doesn't really love tech very much.
I think it's really fantastic how everybody has companies that they've looked at and they've thought about, and how much so many of us are doing things to try to really make Oakland thrive, but do it in a way that fits our values. If we have time, I'd love to take one or two questions from the audience. We have a panel here, but a panel of doers, not just of talkers. Everyone here has made really fantastic things happen. We're supporting a project where great things happen. Do you have some questions that you'd like to ask about the idea of how we support an inclusive ecosystem in Oakland? Maybe we have time for one or two. Let me go in the back.
Hi, I'm a entrepreneur. Just wondering if there's any programs or any points where we can, as entrepreneurs, begin to take the path to creating a better workforce in Oakland. Here, is there any resources for us to tap to make it easier?
Oh my God, there are so many resources to tap. I think probably everybody on this panel would have dozens to answer. I would love to call out a couple just to save time so we can have more questions. People can raise their hands. ICA, that helps incubate companies. Jose. Impact Hub Oakland, where they're hosting a special class on entrepreneurship by Michael Bush, a program that's also held at ICA. Classes at Peralta that support entrepreneurship. Work that Code for America is doing around civic and tech incubators. And then many, many other programs, Bally, the Sustainable Business Alliance, Kiva Zip Loans, Oakland Grown, work by the City of Economic Development. I don't know if there's anything you want to add. What am I leaving out, guys?
The Small Business Development Center at the Oakland Chamber of Commerce.
Depending on what kind of entrepreneur you are, if you're solar focused, there's called the Spun Cube, the Solar for Universal Need. Used to be here in, I think, 55 Harrison. Now it's moving in downtown Oakland, so solar focused.
The Oakland Business Development Corporation comes to mind.
Anybody else have anything else they want to throw in?
Rockwood Leadership Institute.
Yes, please. Oh, okay. All right, so let's make the point A, there's a lot of resources, but B, think about how community-minded everyone is, that we all knew so many resources to share, not just the projects that we worked on. We have time for one more?
Yeah. We'll get Ms. King.
Okay.
May I? Thanks. I'll give it back. So to include the diversity that is Oakland into the conversation, education is crucial. And so my question is for Karen Engel from Peralta. What percentage of the 36% of the student population enrolled in the tech programs are students of color?
And I don't have that off the top of my head, but I could certainly get it. One of the things that we've tried to do, and we're looking at doing more with Kapor Center and Live Work Oakland, is thinking about, and programs like Hack the Hood, is how do we start in the Oakland Unified Schools and get kids exposed to what's possible, and get them into career pathways that we know help with persistence and completion. Because what happens is that kids in high school who may or may not be loving math or any of those things that become barriers to moving ahead get contextualized with something real, using a CNC machine or laying out a video or something that they hang their hat on. And so with these innovative approaches and these career pathway models, these academies at each high school in Oakland, we're beginning to build pathways that can go seamlessly into the Peralta colleges without the placement tests that tend to exclude a lot of people, but a lot more sort of wraparound social service intervention early on in the high schools, and creating partnerships between the colleges and those high schools to make that the case. So we're hoping to really boost those numbers, but what those numbers actually are, I could look up for you.
I think we're going to wrap the questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Cedric to close. Thank you, everybody, for such good answers and information.
So another round of applause for our esteemed panel. We also today want to be sure to thank our co-hosts, so Karen Wertman from Vator Splash and from 2 Oakland, Susan Marinette from Live Work Oakland, the Oakland Local. Definitely would like for my colleague Mario Lugai to stand up because he was a primary organizer of all of this. Thank you, Mario Lugai. I also want to point out our council member Libby Schaff here in the audience, who, as Catherine referred to, has been a long-time embracer and innovator herself around making sure that Oakland is developing a civic tech personality and presence. So thank you for your work. And thank all of you for attending today. Hope it was worth it. And this is the beginning of what we hope will be, as I said at the beginning, a number of conversations about Oakland's inclusive and vibrant tech community. Have a good evening.